Congratulations on purchasing your Stealth 450. Let's open up the box and go through the quick assembly process. As we open up the box, the first thing that you're going to see will be the owner's manual and the crossbow. Below that will be your accessories. Let's go ahead and take the bow out. We can see what we're working with. Down below, you'll see you've got your arrows down here, your quiver, and your scope will be kind of tucked in below as well. Let's get the accessories out and we'll go through the assembly process. Now that we have your 450 unboxed, you'll see that we have the owner's manual, your 3-arrow quiver, your arrows, your Allen wrenches, your bubble level, and your scope, as well as your crossbow. The first thing you'll notice when you look at the crossbow is that the Sentry bow hanger is already installed. When you flip the bow over, you'll also notice that the Picatinny rail for your quiver mount is already installed. So next, let's go ahead and get the quiver bracket installed. Your quiver bracket will already be attached to your quiver. You'll notice the big thumb knob. Just go ahead and unscrew that, and you'll be able to see on the inside where that slides into the slot. You want that screw where it's basically all the way flush with the bracket. You'll just take that quiver bracket, and for most right-handed shooters, you're going to want the quiver to be on the right-hand side of the bow when you're shooting. So because the bow's upside down, the quiver mounting process will be on the left-hand side. So we've loosened this nut. We're just going to slide that onto the Picatinny rail. You want to make sure that the end of the quiver bracket is not out past the end of your Sentry bow hanger. So we're good here. Just tighten that thumb knob down and you'll feel that bracket firm up on the Picatinny rail, nice and solid. To take your quiver off of the bracket, you would just throw that swing arm and that quiver will slide right out of the slot. And then just slide it back on there, tighten that swing arm, and your quiver is good to go. And again, you'll notice when you shoulder it, that quiver and your arrows will be coming down the right-hand side of the crossbow. Next, let's go ahead and get your scope installed onto the scope rail. The first thing that you'll want to do is loosen the nuts that are on the scope rings. And I back those most of the way out so it's easy to get that onto the bracket. With the crossbow on this particular model, you'll want to leave 2 to 3 empty slots in the Picatinny rail. So we'll drop the scope rings into the 4th slot. And I do that by kind of tilting the scope from left to right, and you want to just make sure those brackets get up and out of the way, and you'll feel that scope kind of drop into the grooves cut in the Picatinny rail. Next, just tighten those nuts up. Hand tight is good to start with. And before you go any further, you're going to want to check to make sure the scope is level in the rings and also that your eye relief is good. So as you shoulder the bow, you'll see your crosshairs in here. You want to make sure that those crosshairs are very vertical and horizontal as you look through it. If they're not, you just loosen these 4 screws and you tilt that scope in the rings left or right as needed. The other thing that you're doing as you look through the scope, you want to make sure that you see very clearly in the back of that scope. You don't want it to be fuzzy, you don't want it to have black around the edges, and you also don't want to have to move your head to make sure it fits. Go ahead and again, if it's not quite right, loosen those screws on the rings, slide that scope forward or backwards, or you can actually just move the whole scope on the scope rail itself. So once your eye relief is set, you're going to want to tighten the rings down. You can take your Allen wrench, and there's little holes in these nuts, and just take that Allen wrench, slide it up in there, and firm them up. I kind of alternate so that I make sure that the scope doesn't bind as I'm tightening it. A little bit like tightening lugs on a tire. So just make sure those are good and tight. Next, let's install your bubble level. You'll see an Allen screw on the one end of the bubble level, and you'll want to just take that Allen screw out carefully. There'll be a little flat plate that comes with it, and slide the bubble level across the rail. Line that screw back up. Go ahead and get that snugged up. And then just tighten that down with the included Allen wrench. And this will make sure that when you're shouldering the crossbow, that you're holding that crossbow level. As you can see that bubble, and that'll keep you from canting the bow, and that'll help your accuracy. And that's all there is to the setup of your Stealth 450.